Aristoteles Savalas was born on January 21, 1922, in Garden City, Long Island, the second of 5 children of Greek immigrants who owned a tiny restaurant in Queens. His father, Nick, painted houses by day and sold fruit from a pushcart by night. His mother, Christina, rolled cigarettes for extra money. They spoke only Greek at home. Telly grew up big, dark, and already sporting the thick eyebrows and heavy-lidded eyes that would later make him television's most unforgettable cop. At Sawanhaka High, he boxed light heavyweight, played basketball, and worked as a lifeguard at Jones Beach. He graduated in 1940, enrolled at Columbia University to study psychology, and was already shaving his head because hair is for girls. Pearl Harbor came when he was 19. He tried to enlist immediately but was classified 4F because of asthma and a heart murmur. He kept trying until 1943 when the Army finally took him and sent him to the 12th Medical Training Battalion at Camp Pickett, Virginia. He became a surgical technician, then shipped to England with the 146th General Hospital. By late 1944, he was a corporal attached to the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, during the push into Germany. On December 12, 1944, in the Hürtgen Forest, the meat grinder that made the bulge look merciful, Telly's unit was moving forward when a German counterattack hit them with mortars and machine guns. A round caught him in the left side, tore through his abdomen, and exited his back. He lay in the snow for 6 hours, bleeding out while medics worked under fire. He was given last rites twice. They evacuated him to a field hospital, then to England, then to the States. Surgeons removed 30 inches of intestine and told him he would never eat solid food again. Telly proved them wrong by ordering a steak the day he could sit up. He spent 18 months in hospitals, earned a Purple Heart, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 3 battle stars, the Combat Medical Badge, and a permanent scar that ran from rib cage to hip. He was discharged in June 1946 with a 70% disability pension and a voice that had dropped 2 octaves from screaming in pain. He used the GI Bill to finish Columbia, worked as a radio actor, then television director at ABC, and in 1959 landed a small part in The Young Savages. His bald head, heavy-lidded stare, and gravel voice made directors cast him as psychos and gangsters, Birdman of Alcatraz, Cape Fear, The Dirty Dozen. Then, in 1973, came Kojak. Telly shaved his head completely, stuck a lollipop in his mouth, and became the coolest cop in television history for 5 seasons. He made over 100 films, won an Emmy, and never hid the scar. He showed it off in love scenes. He married 3 times, had 6 children, and kept his Purple Heart in the same drawer as his Emmy. He died of prostate cancer on January 22, 1994, at age 72. 1 day after his birthday. The Greek Orthodox Church in Los Angeles was packed. The Army sent an honor guard. Telly Savalas took a German bullet in the Hürtgen Forest, lived to tell the tale with a lollipop and a "Who loves you, baby?" and proved that the toughest cops on television had already been the toughest medics in the ETO. James Scott Bumgarner was born on April 7, 1928, in Norman, Oklahoma, the youngest of 3 boys in a family that lost everything in the Dust Bowl. His mother died when he was 4. His father, a widowed carpet layer, remarried a woman the boys called Red because of her hair and her temper. She beat them with a bullwhip. When James was 14, his father finally left her. James quit school at 16, joined the Merchant Marine at 17, lied about his age, and shipped out on tankers to the Pacific. He hated the sea,
got discharged for chronic seasickness, and drifted to California, where he modeled swimsuits and pumped gas while sleeping on the beach. Korea broke out in June 1950. James was 22, broke, and ready. He enlisted in the Army in August 1950 and was sent to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, for basic. He volunteered for airborne because of the extra pay and was assigned to the 5th Regimental Combat Team, part of the 24th Infantry Division. In March 1951, he shipped to Korea as a rifleman and landed at Incheon just in time for the Chinese Spring Offensive. His first combat was the defense of the Pukon River line. On April 22, 1951, Chinese human wave attacks hit his company. James was wounded in the hand by shrapnel from a mortar round, but kept firing his M1 until the barrel glowed. He earned his first Purple Heart and a promotion to corporal. 2 weeks later, on May 6th, near the Hwachon Reservoir, he was hit again. This time, a Chinese grenade exploded behind him, shrapnel in the back and buttocks. He crawled 200 yards under fire to reach an aid station. That was Purple Heart number 2. He recovered in a MASH unit, refused evacuation, and went back to the line. By winter 1951, he was a sergeant leading a squad in the Iron Triangle. The cold was brutal, minus 30 degrees, frostbite everywhere. On February 14, 1952, Valentine's Day, his company was holding Hill 266, or Old Baldy, when the Chinese attacked with everything they had. James was in a forward listening post when a friendly artillery round fell short. Shrapnel tore through his leg and side. He was evacuated for good this time, 3rd Purple Heart. He spent the rest of his tour in Japan recovering, then came home in 1952 with 3 Purple Hearts, the Korean Service Medal with 5 battle stars, the National Defense Service Medal, and a permanent limp he hid on camera by favoring his left leg. He changed his name to James Garner, a friend's suggestion, used the GI Bill to study acting, and started getting cast as the quiet, decent guy who could handle himself. Maverick, 1957 to 1960, The Great Escape, The Americanization of Emily, Murphy's Romance, Oscar nomination, Victor Victoria, Space Cowboys. He was married to Lois Clark for 58 years, had 2 daughters, and kept his Purple Hearts in a drawer next to his Emmy. He died of a heart attack on July 19, 2014, at age 86. The Army sent an honor guard to his funeral at Forest Lawn. James Garner took 3 wounds in Korea, came home limping, and spent 50 years proving that the coolest guys on screen are the ones who've already been shot and kept walking.
Burt Stephen Lancaster was born on November 2, 1913, in East Harlem, New York City, the 4th of 5 children in a poor Irish Protestant family. His father was a postal clerk. His mother scrubbed floors. Burt grew up tall, blonde, and built like a Greek statue, running wild in the streets, boxing at the boys' club, and already doing handstands on fire escapes at age 8. He won a scholarship to DeWitt Clinton High, but quit at 16 when his best friend was killed in a gang fight. He joined a circus as an acrobat with his childhood pal Nick Cravat, touring the country as Lang and Cravat, swinging from trapezes without a net for $10 a week and all the sawdust they could eat. Pearl Harbor came when he was 28, married to a circus aerialist named June Ernst, and already famous in vaudeville. He was classified 4F because of a hand injury from a circus accident. He kept trying. In 1942, the Army reclassified him 1A and drafted him into the Army Special Services, the entertainment branch. They sent him to the 43rd Special Service Company in North Africa, then Italy, where his job was to keep 250,000 bored, scared GIs sane by running soldier shows under artillery fire. He landed at Salerno in September 1943, set up his first show in a bombed-out theater while German 88s still dropped shells on the beach. He produced, directed, emceed, and performed acrobatics on a stage made of ammo crates with Nick Cravat as his partner.
They did hand-to-hand balancing while mortars whistled overhead. One night near Casino, a German plane strafed the tent. Burt kept the show going, flipping Nick upside down while tracers stitched the canvas. The soldiers cheered louder than the gunfire. He moved with the Fifth Army up the boot, Anzio, Rome, Florence. He ran shows in olive groves, on tank holes, in ruined cathedrals. He wrote sketches, sang, juggled, and once did a full acrobatic routine on a table while drunk GIs fired pistols in the air for applause. He organized Bob Hope's first overseas tour, produced This Is the Army for the troops, and kept morale high when everything else was hell. He finished the war as a technical sergeant with the Army of Occupation in Austria, running shows for displaced persons and concentration camp survivors. He came home in 1946 with the American Campaign Medal, European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, and a permanent hatred of war he never shook. He signed with Hal Wallace, made his film debut in The Killers 1946, and became Hollywood's greatest physical actor, trapeze artist in Trapeze, the Apache in Apache, the sergeant in From Here to Eternity, the pirate in The Crimson Pirate. He won an Oscar for Elmer Gantry, produced Marty, and made 50 more films, always doing his own stunts at age 60 because I spent the war flipping on ammo crates while bombs fell. Hollywood wires are for sissies. He married 3 times, had 5 children, and kept a locked trunk full of special services scripts and a German helmet he took off a dead soldier near Anzio. He died of a heart attack on October 20th, 1994, at age 80. The Army sent an honor guard to his funeral at Westwood Village. Burt Lancaster spent the war keeping soldiers alive with laughter and acrobatics under fire, then spent 50 years proving that the strongest man in Hollywood had already carried the heaviest burden of all, making hell bearable for 250,000 boys who just wanted to go home.
Sidney Poitier was born on February 20th, 1927, prematurely in a wooden shack on Cat Island, Bahamas, the youngest of 9 children of tomato farmers, so poor they sometimes ate dirt to fill their stomachs. He weighed less than 3 pounds at birth. His mother carried him home in a shoebox. He grew up barefoot, speaking only Bahamian Creole, chasing goats, and believing Miami was the entire United States because that's where his parents sold tomatoes. At 14, he stowed away on a boat to Nassau, worked as a water boy, then at 15, hopped a mail boat to Miami with $3 and a note from his father that said, "Take care of yourself." In Miami, he was chased by the Klan for walking in a white neighborhood. He took a bus north to New York, arrived with nothing, and lied about his age to enlist in the U.S. Army in 1943 at 16 years old. The recruiter looked at the tall, beautiful boy with the perfect English accent he had taught himself from radio and stamped the papers. They sent him to the Northport Veterans Hospital on Long Island as a medical orderly in the psychiatric ward. He was assigned to care for soldiers who had lost their minds in combat, catatonics, screamers, men who thought the Germans were still coming. At 16, he bathed them, fed them, held them when they cried. One night, a doctor ordered him to administer electroshock therapy to a patient who was simply depressed. Sidney refused. The doctor called him a nigger and threatened him with the brig. Sidney walked out of the hospital that night, went AWOL for 3 weeks, and turned himself in only when he was promised an honorable discharge. He was out in 1944 at age 17, with a clean record, no medals, and a conscience that would never let him bow again. He washed dishes in Harlem, slept in bus stations, and answered an ad for actors at the American Negro Theater. They laughed at his Bahamian accent. He taught himself perfect American English by listening to the radio 12 hours a day for 6 months. 6 months later, he came back and got the lead in the all-black production of Lysistrata. He broke the color barrier on Broadway, then Hollywood,
No Way Out, Blackboard Jungle, The Defiant Ones, first black man nominated for Best Actor Oscar, Lilies of the Field, first black man to win Best Actor Oscar, 1964, In the Heat of the Night, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. He turned down roles with the word boy in them, walked off sets when called racial slurs, and became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood while refusing to play anything less than a man. He directed Buck and the Preacher, Stir Crazy, became a diplomat for the Bahamas, was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, and never forgot the night he walked out of that Army psych ward at 16 because a white doctor told him to fry another man's brain. He married twice, had 4 daughters, 6 grandchildren, and died peacefully on January 6, 2022, at age 94. The Army never sent an honor guard. They didn't know. But the entire world stood at attention anyway. Sidney Poitier lied his way into the U.S. Army at 16, walked out on racism at 17, and spent the next 78 years proving that dignity isn't given, it's taken, one refusal at a time.
Harry Dean Stanton was born on July 14, 1926 in West Irvine, Kentucky, a tobacco town so small the only stoplight blinked yellow all day. His father, Sheridan, was a Baptist barber and tobacco farmer who beat the devil out of him. His mother, Ursel, was a hairdresser who cooked on a wood stove and cried when she prayed. Harry grew up skinny, quiet, and already sporting the hollow cheeks and thousand-yard stare that would later break hearts on screen. He played harmonica in hobo jungles at 14, joined the Navy at 17 the day after graduation in 1944, and shipped out as a cook and gunner on LST-970, landing ship tank in the Pacific. His first taste of combat was Saipan, June 1945. The LST beached under fire, dropped its bow doors, and Harry stood on the deck with the twin .50 caliber mount while Japanese mortars walked the water around them. Then came Okinawa, April to June 1945, the bloodiest battle of the Pacific. LST-970 was anchored off the Higuchi beaches as part of the Kamikaze slaughter. From April 6th to June 22nd, the Japanese threw 1,900 suicide planes at the fleet. Harry's ship was hit twice. On April 16th, a Vol dive bomber came straight down the deck. Harry and 2 other gunners opened up with .50s and 20 millimeters. The plane exploded 50 yards short, spraying the deck with burning gasoline and body parts. On May 11th, another kamikaze scored a direct hit on the LST next to them. Harry watched 120 men burn alive. He stood at his gun for 72 straight hours during the worst attacks. No sleep, living on coffee and Benzedrine, eyes red from cordite and fear. He came home in 1946 with the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 2 battle stars, the Philippine Liberation Ribbon, the Navy Good Conduct Medal, and a permanent twitch in his left eye that never went away. He used the GI Bill to study acting at the University of Kentucky, then headed to California with Nick Cravat and Burt Lancaster's old circus partner. He spent 60 years playing the saddest, loneliest, most honest men in cinema. The convict in Cool Hand Luke, the repo man in Repo Man, the broken father in Paris, Texas, the ancient traveler in Lucky, his last film. He made over 250 movies and television shows, always the guy who looked like he had already seen the end of the world and was just waiting for the rest of us to catch up. He never married, though he lived with Rebecca De Mornay for years, had no children, and kept a bottle of Jack Daniels in every room. He played harmonica with Bob Dylan, sang Blue Bayou drunk on stage with Bruce Springsteen, and died peacefully on September 15, 2017, at age 91. The Navy sent an honor guard to his funeral at Hollywood Forever. Harry Dean Stanton spent the war watching friends burn alive in burning water, then spent 70 years showing America what surviving really looks like. Every time those hollow eyes looked into the camera, he wasn't acting. He was still on the deck of LST-970, waiting for the next kamikaze that never came.
Terrence Stephen McQueen was born on March 24, 1930, in Beech Grove, Indiana, the only child of a stunt pilot father who abandoned him and an alcoholic mother who left him with her parents on a Missouri dust farm. Steve grew up wild, half-deaf from an ear infection, running away at 9, joining a street gang at 12, and locked up in the California Junior Boys Republic Reform School at 14 for stealing hubcaps. He learned to box, to fix motorcycles, and to trust nobody. At 17, in 1947, he walked into a Marine Corps recruiting office in Los Angeles and enlisted because they promised me 3 squares and a cot, and I figured they couldn't beat me worse than the streets already had. They sent him to Paris Island, then Camp Lejeune. He was a natural shot, a better fighter, and a constant discipline problem. He went AWOL 7 times, spent 41 days in the brig for fighting MPs, and was busted from private first class to private so often the sergeants lost count. Then, in the winter of 1948, during cold weather training in the Arctic Circle off Norway, his tank platoon was practicing amphibious landings. One M4 Sherman tank broke through the ice and sank in 40 feet of freezing water. 5 Marines were trapped inside. Spieve dove in without orders, cut the hatch open with a torch, and pulled all 5 men out, one by one, while the tank settled to the bottom. He saved every life. The Marine Corps gave him a commendation, restored his rank, and quietly erased most of his brig record. He finished his hitch in 1950 as a private first class with the Good Conduct Medal after they finally got him to behave, the National Defense Service Medal, and a reputation as the toughest, craziest Marine in the platoon. He came home, bought a Harley with his mustering out pay, and drifted to New York, where he studied acting on the GI Bill at the neighborhood playhouse. He started in Off-Broadway, then Hollywood, Somebody Up There Likes Me, The Great Escape, The Magnificent Seven, Bullet, The Getaway, Papillon, The Towering Inferno. He did all his own motorcycle and car stunts, raced professionally, and became the highest-paid actor in the world because he looked like a man who had already stared death down and told it to fuck off. He married 3 times, had 2 kids, flew his own planes, collected guns and motorcycles, and never talked about the tank in the Arctic until 1979, when a reporter finally asked why he always wore that Marine Corps ring. Steve just smiled and said, "Because I earned it the hard way." He died of mesothelioma from asbestos exposure in the Marines and on movie sets on November 7, 1980, at age 50, in Juarez, Mexico, after experimental surgery. The Marines sent an honor guard to his funeral in Ventura, California. Steve McQueen spent 3 years being the worst Marine in the Corps, then one freezing night became the best. Every time he gunned a motorcycle down a San Francisco hill or stared down a camera without blinking, he was still that crazy kid who dove into Arctic water to save 5 brothers he barely knew and came out the king of cool forever.
Jonathan Harshman Winters III was born on November 11, 1925, in Dayton, Ohio, the only child of a banker father who lost everything in the Depression and an alcoholic mother who screamed at the radio. Jonathan grew up big, funny, and already doing voices at age 6, imitating neighbors, teachers, and Franklin Roosevelt to make his mother laugh instead of cry. At Springfield High, he was the class clown, the state diving champion, and the kid who could make the entire cafeteria lose it with a single face. Pearl Harbor came when he was 16. He tried to enlist at 17, but his father refused to sign. The day he turned 18 in 1943, he walked into the Marine Corps recruiter and said, "I want to kill Japs and make people laugh," in that order. They sent him to Parris Island, then Camp Pendleton. He qualified expert with the M1, the BAR, and the .30 caliber machine gun. In 1944, he shipped out as a private first class with Marine detachment aboard the escort carrier USS Bon Homme Richard, CV-31, in the Pacific. He was a gunner on the 40mm quad mount amidships. His first combat was the invasion of Saipan, June 1944. The Richard launched fighters while Jonathan stood at his gun watching kamikazes dive on the fleet. One came straight at them. He opened up with the quad 40s and watched the plane disintegrate 200 yards out. Pieces of the pilot rained on the deck. Jonathan's only comment, "Well, that's one less Christmas card I have to send." Then came Okinawa, April-June 1945. The Bon Homme Richard was part of Task Force 58, the fast carrier group that took the heaviest kamikaze punishment of the war. Jonathan stood at his gun for 72 straight hours during the worst attacks, no sleep, living on coffee and amphetamines. On May 11, a Zeke crashed into the flight deck 50 yards from his mount, spraying burning gasoline across the ship. Jonathan helped fight the fires while still manning his gun in case another plane came in. The ship survived. He did too. He finished the war with the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 3 battle stars, the Philippine Liberation Ribbon, the Navy Occupation Service Medal, and a permanent case of what they then called battle fatigue. He came home in 1946, used the GI Bill to study art at Kenyon College, then started doing stand-up in Dayton nightclubs. He invented characters on the spot, Maud Frickert, Elwood P. Suggins, Chester Honeyhugger, because the voices he heard in his head on the gun mount never really went away. He exploded on television in the 1950s, guest starred on every show that existed, made classic albums, and became Robin Williams' idol. Robin called him "my Jedi Master." He was in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, The Russians Are Coming, Mork and Mindy as Mork's son, and voiced Grandpa Smurf. He made America laugh until it cried for 60 years. He battled manic depression, spent time in mental hospitals, and kept a Marine Corps Eagle, Globe, and Anchor tattoo on his arm until the day he died. He married Eileen Schauder in 1948 and stayed with her for 60 years. He died of natural causes on April 11, 2013, at age 87. The Marines sent an honor guard to his funeral in Montecito. Jonathan Winters spent the war on a carrier deck shooting at kamikazes, then spent 70 years proving that the funniest man alive had already stared into hell and laughed so the rest of us wouldn't have to cry.